Hello everyone, this is Finance 101, Excel in Excel. We are in module number 3, and in this video I'm going to be going over the second part of our textbook project. Our main goal in the second part of the video is to format the worksheet that we've already created. So as you can see, I have here our worksheet for Manola Department Stores incorporated. All the numbers are already in place, all the calculations, so I just need to add the formatting now. So some of the things that we were required to do are formatting the numbers, of course, the worksheet title, the subtitle, the column headers, the row headers, and also we want to concentrate on formatting the area with the what if assumptions. We want to make sure that the reader of the worksheet understand that that is supplementary information. So we're going to reduce the size of the font for that area just so that it's not a distraction with respect to the rest of the worksheet. So let's go ahead and start with our first task. We want to assign formats to a set of non-adjacent ranges. So the instruction number 1 says select the range B4 to H4. All right, B4 to H4. So that's where I have my revenues figures, right? While holding down control, I'm going to hold control so I can select other ranges. We're going to select the non-adjacent ranges of B6 to H6, so our gross margin, right? And then B9 to H9, the first expense, the bonus. B14 to H14, the total expenses. And B16 to H16. So that would be the line with the operating income. All right, so we can go ahead and just let control go. We've selected all those ranges. Next says on the home tab in the number group, we want to click the dialog box launcher. So that's a little arrow right here in the number area. We're in the home tab. This will display the dialog box for formatting cells. And the instruction says to click on currency. We're in the number tab, the first one on the left. So we want the currency format. We want to make sure that we have 2 decimal places. We need to change that if necessary. In my case, I already have 2, but you can use those arrows going up or down to adjust that number to 2. And then select the $ in the symbol list. All right, I have it set to none. So I'm going to click on that menu, and the first one there is the $. So what that $sign is going to do is going to give us the numbers in a currency format with a floating $sign. That means that the $sign will be close to the first number on the left, right? As opposed to a fixed $sign where the $sign will be displayed at the far left of each cell. So also, we want to select the red font color for the negative numbers. So we want it in parentheses and in red. So that's the last option for negative numbers. We don't have any negative numbers in this worksheet. So this option is really not going to do anything specifically for this example, but it's important to use a consistent formatting in your worksheets, right? So, and that's typically what we use when we have dollar figures, instead of having a negative sign, right, in parentheses and in red. All right, so the instruction now say click OK to apply that formatting. Notice here one quick comment. Another way to add the $ to all these amounts would have been to use the $ here option, the accounting number format, and the numbers group. But what that would do is it would apply the $ and the 2 decimal places. However, it will give you a fixed $sign. And the requirements of our workbook ask specifically for a floating $sign. So that's what we had to use the format cells dialog box launcher to achieve our result. All right, so once we click OK on that box, we've applied the desired format. Next, we're gonna select the range B5. So I just clicked anywhere in my worksheet to deselect those ranges that I had highlighted. Now we want B5 to H5. So that would be the cost of goods sold. This is the next range that we're going to format. While holding down control, so I'm going to hold control, select another range, B10 to H13. All right, so that's salary. And notice here, this is going to be a matrix, B10 to H13. So we want all the other expenses from salary to miscellaneous and for all months from January to June, and including the total, right? Because we want column H as well. All right, so there I have my range. Then we can release control while we've selected that non-adjacent ranges. And then we're going to go to the home tab. That's where we are in the number group again. We're going to click on that arrow to display the dialog box launcher. This will display that format sales dialog box. And we're going to apply the currency format again, 2 decimal places, which is what I have. This time we want to select none in the symbol, right? So we don't want the $ for these numbers. And we want to select the red font color in parentheses for negative numbers. So the last option. All right, we're going to click OK. So, all right, what this option did was to apply a formatting that is similar to the comma style. As you can see, we have comma separators for the thousands place. We have 2 decimal places. So we could have used the comma style here in the numbers group. This button right here that looks like a comma would apply the same comma style. However, by default, when we apply the comma style, if there is a 0 value on one of the cells, you would get a dash. And the specific requirements for our workbook were to display a 0,00 for a value of 0 in a cell as opposed to a dash. So as you can see here in cell D9, that's a 0 value. And we didn't want a dash, we wanted that format. That's why we had to go through the format cell dialog box instead of using this icon here for the comma style. All right, so we are done with that step. You can just select any empty cell to get out of that selected range and to apply that mode that we chose. Next, we're going to format the worksheet titles. So it says press Control Home to select A1. All right, this worksheet is relatively small, so I could easily just go to cell A1. But this option, this shortcut of Control Home, is very useful when I'm working with a really large worksheet, right? So let's say that my pointer is in row 1400, right? Really down below my worksheet, and I want to quickly go up to A1. Instead of scrolling up with a scroll bar or going up with the arrows, I can just press Control Home, and that takes my pointer straight to cell A1, right? So that's a really good and useful shortcut to remember. Next, once we have A1 selected, we're going to click on the column A heading. So click on there to select that column. As you can see now, it's completely highlighted, and we want to use the bold button, right, to bold all the text in that particular column. All right, so that's going to be in the font group here. We're still in the home tab, font group. The B with that darker color is for bolding our cells. So go ahead and click on that. As you can see, now they're in bold. A shortcut for that is Control capital B. So you can use that as well. Next, step 3, we want to increase the font size in cell A1. So just select A1. Let's change this font size to 28 point. So in the font group, we're going to click on this drop down menu. It's currently set to 11. Click on that drop down menu and select 28. Right, so that increases the size of that title. Step 4, increase the font size in cell A2 to 16 points. Right, so where my subtitle is, cell A2, we want 16 points. You can always just type the number as well instead of looking at the options in the drop-down menu. Step 5, we want to select the range A1 to I2. Right, so A1 to I2. All right, so we're going to select that area, and we're going to change the fill color to a dark blue, text to lighter 80% to just add a background color to that selected range. So in order to do that, we're going to use this icon here called fill color in the font group. Click on the drop down menu, and we're going to try to find that specific color. All right, so we want dark blue. So that's a dark blue. Text 2, looks like we're in the right column. Lighter, 80%. So to get lighter, we're gonna move down, and that's it, the second one, right? So second row, 4 column from left to right. All right, that's the color I'm looking for. I've selected that specific shade and added to that background color. Step 6, with I1 and I2 still selected, so I'm not going to deselect that range. Now we're going to change the font color to dark blue accent 1. All right, so the A icon here in the font group, I'm going to click on that drop down menu and I want dark blue. So let's see what this one is called. Dark blue text 2, that's not the one I want. Let's see the next one. Dark blue accent 1. All right, that's the one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns from left to right, first row. Go ahead and select it. All right, we can click anywhere else to see that's the desired format. So you, as I said, click on any empty cell to deselect that range, and then you can see if the appearance of your worksheet looks like what we're looking for, right? The desired result. Next, we're going to assign cell styles to non-adjacent rows and colors to a cell. So let's go ahead and select the range A3 to I3. So A3 to I3. We're going to be working with the column headers, and we're going to apply the heading 3 cell style. So cell styles are in the home tab. That's where we are. Under the styles group, the third option here is cell styles. So click on that drop down menu, and we want the heading 3. All right, so here is in the title and heading section, we want heading 3. So click on it. All right, that has formatted. As you can see, it kind of changed the font and the color. They're now blue. Number 2, select the range A6 to H6. A6 to H6. And while holding Control, so press Control, select the ranges A14 to H14. Right, so our total expenses row. And also H16, A16 to H16. So our row with our operating income. All right, and we're going to apply, so you can let Control go, and we're going to apply the total cell style to those non-adjacent ranges. So we're going to go to the same group, the styles group, click on cell style, the drop down menu, and this time we want the, it says the total cell style, so the one on that last column in the titles and headings group. All right, click total, right, and just select anywhere. That usually gives you that double underline for totals. So that's what happens when you apply that specific total cell style. All right, we are in step number 3, so let's move on to step 4. Select cell A4, so that's the cell that says revenues, and click the fill color button in the home tab font group again to apply the last fill color that we use. All right, so as you can see, if I go to that fill color icon or button, it is now, that little bucket looks blue. So that means that if I just click on it, it will use the last color that I had previously used, right? So I don't have to go to the drop-down menu and select that specific shade. I can just click on that and it will apply that last color that I use, as you can see, right? So revenue now is in that same dark blue text to lighter 80% color for the background. All right, number 5, click the font color button, which is in the same group, right? And we want to apply the same font color used earlier. So again, just like with the fill color button, with the font color, we can just click on it as it is the one that we most recently used. And that changed to the desired font color. All right, so we are done with step number 5. Let's see, click the font color to apply the last color to the cell contents. All right, and it was just cell A4. Perfect. So we're gonna move on to our next section. We wanna copy the cells format using the format painter button. All right, so here's another cool option. If I had to apply that background color or the font color to other cells, I can use this format paint button, the one that looks like a paintbrush here on the left. If we double click on it, it will allow me to apply that same formatting to other cells. So it's pretty useful when I have to format a lot of non-adjacent cells, right? So The instructions say step number 1, if necessary, click cell A4. That's where we have our revenue cell, right? The one that we just formatted. This is going to select the source of that format, right? So whatever I have clicked right now, this is what I'm going to copy to other cells. So in order to copy this format, I'm going to double click on that format painter button, the one that looks like a brush in the clipboard area. So double click. And now I can go ahead and apply this to other cells, right? So look at what happens when I move my mouse to the worksheet. Now the pointer has become a block style cross, right? Or plus sign, and it has a little paintbrush right next to it. You see it when I move it? All right, so that means that I've got something to copy, and I have to choose the destination cells. So step 2 says click cell A6. So we want the gross margin to assign that format. So look at what happens when I clicked on it. It applied the same format, right? The font and the background color. So A6 was my destination cell. With the pointer still a block plus sign, as you can see, I still have it on that copy mode. Next, we're going to drag through the range A16 to H16. So we're going to go to A16 to H16. All right, and we're going to apply that same format, background, and font color to that entire range. All right, now I've finished copying, so I got to make sure that I get out of this copy mode. Otherwise, every time I click on something, it will apply the same format. So to finish this copying and pasting process, we can either click on that format painter button again, or just simply press escape. Right? As you can see now, if you look at the pointer on my worksheet, it's just now that block plus sign, but there's no paintbrush next to it. So I've completed that process. Now, when I did this, look at what happened to my operating income. The formatting that I had before, the currency with the dollar sign, the floating dollar sign, the 2 decimal places has disappeared. And this is kind of an unwanted consequence of using that format painter option that we used earlier. When I copy the background and font from the revenue cell, that source cell revenue did not have the desired formatting, the currency format, right? So when I painted, when I copied the background color and the font, I was able to achieve that goal, but the unwanted consequence is that I accidentally removed the currency format. So no big deal, we can go back and reapply it. Right? So it says the next step, apply the currency scale to the range B16 to H16. So I just want the numbers from January to the last month, June, and also the total. So just B16 to H16. And we're going to apply the same currency style. So remember that we have to do it with the format cells dialog launcher box. So we're going to click on there. We want currency, make sure that we want 2 decimal places, and we do want a floating dollar sign. So make sure that under symbol you have that dollar sign. All right, press OK, and now we're back to normal. I'm going to click somewhere else just so that we can make sure that all those numbers look correct, right? Compared with figure 349 in your textbook, it looks perfect up to this point. The last step in improving the appearance of our worksheet is to make sure that we format the section with our what if assumptions. So I'm going to scroll down just a bit so we can see that entire area with our what if assumptions. As I mentioned earlier, we want to distinguish this section as it is more of a supplementary data section. So we want to distinguish it from the main worksheet. And in order to do that, we're going to reduce the font size of the cells in this area. And also we're going to apply a formatting consistent with the rest of the worksheet. So step 1 says select cell A18. That's where we have the title of that section, what if assumptions. We want to change the font size to 9 points. So click on that drop down menu and select 9. We're making it smaller. We want to italicize and underline the text in that same cell A18. So right next to the bold button in the font group of our home tab, we have 3 options here: bold, the italic font, and then the underline. So that's what we want. We want to press on the italic font style. That's going to slant that text slightly to the right. And then we're also going to click on the U, big U for underline, to underline that text, right? We can also use shortcuts for those two options, Control-I for italic and Control-U for underline, right? So click somewhere else just to make sure that it looks right. Yes, it is in italic and it's underlined, so we can move on to the next step. Step number 4 says select the range A19 to B25. So A19 to B25. All right, so all of the names of our assumptions and the amounts. We want to change the font size to 9. So we're going to make it smaller. Step 5, select the range A18 to B25. So this time we want to grab that title as well, the what if assumptions title, A18 to B25. And we're going to click on the fill color button in the home tab, font group, to apply that last fill color that we had used, right? So click on it, and that should make it that nice light blue. Step 6, we're going to apply the same font color. So click on the font color button to apply that blue. Since we had already used it, it's the last one used. It's going to be displayed there. We don't have to click on the drop down menu and find it again. So we've done steps 5, 6. Let's move on to step 7. It says deselect the range A18 to B25. All right, just so that we can display this what if assumptions section or area of our worksheet. We can go ahead and compare it with figure 350, right? So that's your benchmark in your textbook. Make sure that it looks correct, that it looks the same formatting, that all the numbers are accurate, etc. The next step in this module is to learn how to create a cluster column chart, and we're going to introduce it in a new sheet as it was requested in our instructions. So the purpose of having a graph like this or a chart like this is to show the projected expenses by category for each month. Our output is going to look like figure 351 in our textbook. So as you can see here, each cluster will have 5 different columns as there are 5 different expenses, and we have 6 different months in our data. Therefore, we have 6 clusters of 5 columns each. So let's go ahead and take a look at our data so we can get started. I'm going to scroll up to the top of the sheet because I'm going to need to select the column headers for each month. So step number 1 says select the range A3 to G3. All right, so that's all the months. And then we're going to hold Control because we want a non-adjacent range of cells. This time we're going to select range A9 to G13. So that's all the 5 different categories of expenses. Notice that I've also selected column A with the names of each of those expenses, not just the data, but I also want the labels. So I let go of the Control button, and now I'm going to display the Insert tab. It's right next to the Home tab across the top, on the menu across the top. So click on Insert. There are different types of charts here that you can select. You can look at the different pictures and select what you want, but in this case the instructions are asking us to use one of the recommended charts, which can be accessed by clicking on this button on the left, the one that says recommended charts with a big question mark. All right, so click on it and make sure that you are on the recommended charts tabs, as there are 2 different ones, all charts and recommended charts. You can go ahead and experiment here with the different types of charts. If you click on each of them, it will show you your data, which is different types of graphs, right? We're going to go back to the very top and select the cluster column, which is the requested type. So once you see that green box around the selected type of graph, you can go ahead and press OK. All right, so once we have drawn the chart, right, Excel has drawn the chart for us, we can go ahead and move it by using this Move Chart option here on the Chart Design tab. When I created the chart, a new tab was added to the top menu across the top. It's called Design or Chart Design. And the button on the far right of that tab says Move Chart. So let's click on that. You'll get this dialog box where you will have to enter some data. For example, what is the name of the sheet where you want to put it in, right? We want to put this graph in a new sheet, so click on New Sheet. And the instructions said, call that sheet Expense Chart Sheet. So we're going to type that in, Expense Chart sheet. Notice that there was a title for it. I just selected and typed something over it, right? So expense chart sheet. All right, it looks good. And I'm going to press OK. And look what that does. It creates a new tab. So pay attention to the tabs on the bottom left corner of your screen. We have two tabs, one that says sheet 1. That's where our original worksheet is. And now we have a new tab called expense chart sheet, where the graph that we have created has been placed. All right, so we have completed that task. One thing worth mentioning here is that there are 3 months, March, May, and June, that only have 4 columns. And the reason for that is that for those 3 months, the revenues were not high enough to trigger a bonus. The bonus was 0. And Excel will not draw a column if they have a value of 0, obviously, right? So that's why we're only seeing 4 columns for those 3 months. Next, we're going to insert a chart title. All right, so click on anywhere on that chart title placeholder. Go ahead and select that text. You can delete it or just type over it. We want a title called 6 month. So 6-month with capital M, projected expenses. All right, so we have our title. The next step says select that text. We're going to format it and go to the home tab, and we're going to select underline, or you can press Ctrl-U to underline that title, and then click anywhere outside of the chart to make sure that we did it correctly. All right, 6-month projected expenses is my title. It looks underlined, so everything looks good up to that point, right? Next, we're going to add data labels. All right, why do we want to add data labels? So that we can see the values of each of the columns here. So that makes the graph or chart much easier to read. So let's go ahead and follow the steps. We're going to click on the chart, anywhere in the chart. Make sure that you don't click on one of the columns, but kind of on the blank part of the chart. And we are going to display the chart elements gallery, which is in this big plus sign here. So click on that chart elements. That will display a flyout menu. And here we want to point to the data labels. There's a little arrow next to it. So click on that to display another flyout menu. You can go ahead and put your mouse over each of them to see what happens, to experiment with the different options. So inside in, inside base, data call out, etc. The one that we need is called outside in. So let's click on that. All right, so that's putting those data labels, the values for each of those columns right outside or right above each of those columns, which makes us get a really good, a clear view of what the value of each of those columns is, right? So click the chart elements button again, that big plus sign, to collapse or get rid of that flyout menu. And we are ready for our next step. Next, we're going to learn how to apply chart filters. So why do we need filters for, right? What are some examples in which we may want to use filters? In this example, we have several categories in this chart, and it's looking very, very crowded, right? It's kind of hard to see. And there are some series in this data series that don't really add much value. For example, look at the bonus, right? It's 5,000 in only 3 months. It's very small. It really doesn't add much value here. So I could filter that series out. I could also filter out the category salary, as bonus and salary are both compensation categories, and we could just leave the other 3 non-compensation categories. So let's go ahead and do that. To apply chart filters, we'll use this third icon on the top right corner. So the first one was chart elements, the second one is for chart style, and the third one is for chart filters. So click on it. That will display the chart filters gallery. And here, as you can see, all the different data series are selected. I'm going to deselect bonus and salary. So click on those check marks to kind of unmark those 2 series, right? And I'm going to press apply, click on apply at the bottom left of that gallery. All right, so a new graph has been created now. Each month has only 3 columns, right, for site rental, marketing, and miscellaneous. So only the non-compensation categories. All right, so go ahead and click on that chart filters button again to kind of get rid of that gallery. And we are ready for our next step. We're going to add access titles to the chart. All right, so we always want to make sure that we make the graphs very easy to read. So the reader of our worksheet should be able to tell what's on the vertical axis, what's on the horizontal axis of the chart. So the instructions said, if necessary, click anywhere in the chart area outside the chart to select it, right? Make sure that we are selecting our chart. We're going to click on the chart elements, the big plus sign, to display that gallery. And we're going to point to the axis titles. All right, so click on that little arrow next to it, and we see primary, horizontal. Look what happens when I put my mouse over it. Now I have a title on the horizontal axis of my graph. If I point to primary vertical, now I have a title on the vertical axis. And that's what I want. I do want to click on primary vertical. So click on that box. And as you can see, now we have a title on the left-hand side of the menu, right? On the vertical axis. It is sideways, so I'm gonna format it to make it easier to read. So just click on the chart elements to collapse that gallery. And we're gonna format that axis title that we just enter in there. So we're gonna select that placeholder, anywhere in that placeholder, and we are going to select the text. And we're going to replace it with a $sign. So just type a $sign. All right. Select anywhere on the chart. Now right click on the title placeholder because we're going to change the orientation. So when I right click, I now display this shortcut menu, right? And we're going to click on Format Axis Title, the last one. There are going to be different tabs here. So if necessary, click on the title options, the first tab. And from here, we're going to click on the size and properties button is the third one. So click on size and properties. And once you have that gallery or menu displayed, we want to click on alignment arrow. So if it's collapsed, make sure that you click on it to display that alignment window. And we're going to click on the text direction. To display the text direction list. All right, and here we see different options. We have horizontal, rotate text 90%, etc. stacked. Our instructions say click horizontal, so the very first one. And that's going to change that $sign from being sideways to being like this, right? All right, so we're going to click the close button. That's that little X on the top right corner of this Format Axis Title pane. So click on it to close that menu, and we are ready for our next step. We're going to change the chart style this time. So why do we want to change the chart style? Maybe we feel like the visual appearance of our graph is not optimal. We want to try different options. So let's go ahead and follow the steps and see what chart style we need to select according to our instructions. So to display the different chart styles, we are going to select the chart design tab at the top, right, at the menu on the top, and we want to click on the more buttons. This is little, the one that looks like an arrow pointing down, right? As you can see, when I put my mouse there, it says more. So when I click on there, I'm going to be able to see all the different choices, and you can experiment again by clicking on each of them and seeing the different chart styles. All right, the instructions are asking us to use, I think, style 6. All right, so go ahead and click on that more again and kind of hover your mouse over the different styles. There it is, that's style number 6. So I'm gonna click on it, and there we go. We have changed the style of our chart according to our instructions. Next, we're gonna modify the chart axis number format. All right, so why do we want to do this? For example, here on the vertical axis, all my numbers have 2 decimal places and they're all 0.00. So that's kind of pointless, right? I'm using extra space. It's looking really cluttered. I could definitely get rid of those 2 zeros and just give more space. So right click on any of the values on that vertical axis. So I'm going to right click in there. As you can see, I've selected those values. Now that's going to display a shortcut menu again. We want to click on Format Axis, the last one. And then if necessary, click the Access options. There's 2 tabs here, so make sure that you are on the first one. And once we are in the Access options tab, scroll all the way down until you see number. Number is visible. We want to click on that to display the different options. All right, so there we go. We can format our numbers now. So my instruction says in the decimal places text box, set it to 0. I have it set to 2 right now. So I'm gonna click on there, delete the number and put a 0 instead. We wanna get rid of those 2 decimal places, right? Notice that there are several other options here. You could change the maximum and minimum values or the units, the major and minor units that are in between each of those values displayed on your vertical axis. All right, so you can play with those different options to kind of learn what other alternatives are available. We just need to change the number of decimal places to 0. All right, so go ahead and once you've selected that, close that Format Axis pane by clicking on that X at the top right corner. And now look at your graph, observe the graph to make sure that what you did worked. All those 0.00, the 2 decimal places have disappeared, right? So it looks like it worked. All right, next we're gonna learn how to remove filters and data labels. So we learned how to add them, right? We added a filter where we eliminated our bonus and salary category. We're gonna experiment now adding it back, right? And then also we added all these data labels, but I don't know about you, but I really don't like it. It's looking very cluttered, and really to see a value, you can always just put your mouse point with your pointer to each column and you'll be able to see the value, right? So you don't need to really have them displayed. So let's go ahead and learn how to remove those. So step 1 says click the chart elements button, so the big plus sign, and this will display that gallery. We're going to click the data labels option. Make sure that we click on that, and we're going to remove that check mark. All right, so that will remove all of those data values and for my labels. Next, we're going to click the chart elements buttons. That will collapse that entire window, that menu. Next, we're going to click on the chart filters button, the third one. And here we want to add back the bonus and salaries category, right? We want to click on those 2 boxes. We want to put them back into our graph. All right, so once we've selected those 2, make sure that you press apply on the bottom left corner of that gallery. And there we have our graph kind of has changed to what we had originally. All right, so once we've completed our workbook and we have our chart ready, we can start working on organizing our workbook. So one of the things that we'll need to organize here is our sheets, the different worksheets. As you can see on the bottom left corner, we have 2 tabs. One is unnamed. Generally, the names that are given by Excel are sheet 1, sheet 2, something very generic, so not very descriptive. So we definitely want to change that. We also could change the color of each of those tabs, and that will help us to distinguish those 2 sheets even more. And then finally, we want to reorder these 2 sheets because when a reader opens our Excel worksheet, we want the most important sheet first. So that's going to be on the left-hand side. So let's go ahead and start with step number 1. Says change the color of the expense chart sheet to dark blue text 2. So we can go ahead and right-click on it, right-click on that sheet. That's going to open that shortcut menu, click on tab color, and here we want dark blue text 2, which is column 4, row 1. All right, so when you hover your mouse over it, you should be able to see it and confirm that you've got the right color. All right, perfect. Then double-click the sheet tab label sheet 1 at the bottom of the screen. So double-click on it. As you can see, that has highlighted the text, so I can just go ahead and add a new name, and that will get rid of the existing text. We want to call this 6-month financial projection. All right, click enter. And we're going to change the sheet tab color. So right click on it on the new tab that you just created a new name for it. And we want to select light turquoise background 2. So click on tab color This particular hue is column 3, row 1. I put my mouse over it. I confirm the name of the color, light turquoise, background 2. Excellent. That's exactly what I need. So I'm going to click on it. All right. So I have my two labels correctly, my two tabs correctly labeled with the colors that I want. Next, we're going to change the order of those two tabs. So the most important one, of course, is the one with the worksheet where we have all our data calculations. And we want that to be the first one that a reader would see once the reader opens the worksheet. So in order to reorder them, I'm just going to grab the 6-month financial planning projection with a left click with my mouse. Click on it and hold it, lift that sheet over the other one, put it in front of it, and now you can let go. All right, so as you can see, we flipped the order of those two sheets. So now we have our 6-month financial projection as the first one, the first thing that readers are going to see, and the other one is the expense chart sheet. All right, so now that we have reordered the sheets, make sure that we do a spell check, right? That everything is spelled correctly in our sheet. So the instructions say with the 6-month financial projection sheet active. So let's go ahead and make that our active sheet. We're going to press Control Home. That's going to take me to cell A1. Sorry, I pressed Control End instead. I meant to press Control Home. That takes my mouse all the way to cell A1, as you can see. All right, so one of the things that I wanted to mention with respect to spell checking is that by default, Excel does the spell checking only on the active sheet. Or if you have selected a range of cells, 2 or more cells, it would check the spelling in that range, right? In that range of cells. So if we want the spell check to work on the entire workbook, what we need to do is select both sheets. So once we have our 6-month financial projection active, we're going to press Control and we're going to click on the other sheet, the expense chart sheet. So click on it. As you can see, now they both look active, and now we can go to the Review tab right across the top, and then the spelling check is going to be on the far left. It says spelling, has an ABC with a check mark. So go ahead and click on that. All right, it's telling me that Manola is not in the dictionary. That's okay, it's a name, so you can say ignore once, and then that's it. That was super easy. I had spelled everything correctly. So click on OK, and we can move on to the next section. If there were any other errors in your spelling, you would make sure that you change that to the suggestion, if that suggestion is correct, or just come up with a new value, a new text for that cell if it was incorrect or misspelled. All right, so our next step is to preview our worksheet and print it out, right? And when we preview our worksheet, we want to make sure that it fits nicely on the page that we're going to print. Now, by default, Excel only prints the active sheet. So if we want to print out both sheets, we're going to select both of them. So the instructions say if they're both not selected, select one, press Control, and then the other one. I think both of ours are still selected. So we're going to click on File on the ribbon, and that's going to take me to this drop-down menu, which is called the Backstage View. Here we're going to click on Print. And there are several options that we need to change here. All right, so step 3 says click print in Backstage View to display the print screen. We've done that just now. Step 4, click the portrait orientation. All right, so under portrait orientation, click on that drop down menu, and we want to change that to a landscape orientation. So select landscape orientation. All right, so now allows my sheet to be horizontally displayed or horizontally, so I should be able to fit more columns on it. Still not, I cannot see the entire sheet as I only have months January to April. So the next instruction says in the no scaling option, click on that drop down menu, and we want to select fit sheet on one page. All right. So when I do that, my printout looks really small on the page. It does fit entirely in my sheet, which I achieved what I wanted to, but it's just too small. These are the settings that the instructions are asking us to do. So just leave it like this, before you save it one final last time. But I do want to point out is that if your screen is set up in this way and you're having this issue just like with me, like with mine, what you can do is from that drop down menu, instead fit all columns on one page. That usually works for me because that's the problem, the fitting problem that I'm having, that I want to have all the columns fitting on one page. And as you can see, it's now much more visible to the reader, right? But I'm going to change that back to the required setting, which was fit sheet on one page. All right. So if that setting looks good for you, I would go ahead and now press print, get that sheet, compare it to the final tables on your textbook. It should match tables of figure 369A and B respectively. All right, so I'm gonna go back here. Remember to press print to get that sheet of paper, two, right? One with a worksheet and one with a chart. But I'm not gonna print it. I'm just gonna show you how to deselect those two tabs that we had selected earlier, right? So we can go ahead and right click on, it says on the 6-month financial projection. And the last option here on this drop down menu is ungroup sheets. All right, so when I click on that, click somewhere else, and now they have both been deselected. So we're gonna save our work, file, save. All right, so we are almost done with this project. We only have a few more tasks left. Our next task is to learn how to magnify the view of our worksheet or to shrink it. If we magnify the view, Excel is going to enlarge the view of our worksheet and we're going to see fewer columns and rows on our screen. In contrast, if we shrink the view of our worksheet, we're going to be able to see more columns and rows. So step number 1 is select cell A1 if it's not active. You can press Control Home to get there as well. We're going to display the View tab in that menu across the top. So there it is. And then click the Zoom button. It's going to be in this Zoom group. The Zoom button is the one that looks like a magnifying glass. So click on there and it will display different magnification options. We want to select 75% according to step 2. So click on 75% and then press OK. All right, as you can see, what happened is that Excel is shrinking the view of my worksheet to only 75%. I can see more columns on the right hand side and also more rows. My screen right now looks a little bit different than what is displayed in your textbook because I have my screen resolution set to a different level to what is suggested at the beginning of each model in your textbook. And that is just because it allows me to have an optimal size for this video tutorials, right? But if you want yours to look exactly like the one in your textbook, make sure that you follow the instructions to set your screen resolution to match it to the textbook. All right, so in your textbook at 75%, you still cannot see all the rows. So the next step, step 3, is to click the zoom out button on the status bar. That's at the bottom right corner here. This is called the zoom status bar. You can adjust this bar to the desired level. So the instruction says to shrink it to 70%. And now with the resolution set in the textbook, you should be able to see all the rows. We're going to go back to normal now. So this was just to demonstrate how we can get the entire worksheet into our screen. Go ahead and click the 100% button in the Zoom group right next to the Zoom magnifying glass that we had used earlier. So I'm going to click on it and that will take the sizing of my worksheet or the view of my worksheet to regular size, right, to 100%. Next, we're going to learn how to split our worksheet into panes. So when do we want to use this option? It's very useful when we're dealing with very large worksheets. It would allow you to break your worksheet into 2 or 4 panes, which you can see simultaneously on your spreadsheet. Each of those panes will have a separate scroll bar, so you can scroll up, down, or left or right independently in each of those 4 panes. So we're going to select cell E8. Why E8? Because that is where we want to split our worksheet. When I have active cell as E8, Excel is going to put a horizontal pane or line right above that cell and a vertical one right to the left of that active cell. So the freeze panes option will be on the View tab, and we are already there. So select View, and we want to select the Split option, right, to create this pane. So click on Split, and as you can see now we have that vertical gray line and that horizontal gray line right above and right to the left of that cell E8 that we had selected. All right, so now we can look at each of the panes separately. So you can see we have two different status bars or scroll bars at the bottom. You can move them independently. Also, we have two on the right hand side here, and you can move those up and down independently as well for each panel. All right, let's go ahead and remove the panels. So to remove the panels, we just click on the Split button again, and that removes all those panes, right? So we're back to normal. Next, we're going to learn how to freeze columns and rows. How is this useful? Again, when we're working with really large worksheets, sometimes we want to freeze a column or a row so that if we have to, say, scroll far to the right, I can still see my row headers, right, on column A. Or if I have to scroll down a lot, by freezing my first row, the row with my column headers, I can still see them, right? And that allows me to find a value and to see to what category it belongs to very easily. So let's follow the instructions. We want to scroll the worksheet until Excel displays row 3 as the first row and column A as the first column on the screen. All right, so let's scroll down just a little bit. We want to make sure that row 3 is the first one that is displayed. There it is. And then column A. All right, we're going to select cell B4. All right, so B4. Why B4? Because when I decide to freeze panes, Excel is going to choose the column to the left of that active cell and the row above that active cell. So we're going to click on Freeze Panes, which is on the View tab. So we're still on the same tab. Click on Freeze Panes. There are 3 options here. We're going to select the first one, Freeze Panes, which will allow you to freeze the column and the row, right? So the row above the active cell and the column to the left of that active cell. As you can see now, we have those very thin gray lines freezing our first column, column A, and our first row, row 3. So look what happens. If I scroll down, I can still see those column headers, right? The months January to June and the total. And if I scroll to the right, I can still see column A, the row headers, right? All right, so let's go ahead and unfreeze the worksheet columns and rows. So press Control Home, and that's going to take you to cell B4. And notice that before, in a regular worksheet, if we press Control Home, that takes us to cell A1, right? Because that's the top left corner. But since now we have this frozen column and frozen row, our top left corner of the worksheet is now cell B4. So that's when I press Control Home, it takes me to that specific cell. All right, so we're going to click on the Freeze Panels button again in the View tab. And the first option is Unfreeze the Panes, right? So we're just undoing what we had done earlier. So make sure that you save the workbook, File, Save. So we didn't really make any changes, right? We were just experimenting with some things, but we want to make sure that we've saved our worksheet. All right, next we're going to talk about what if analysis. So as you can see at the bottom of the worksheet, we have a set of assumptions called our what if assumptions. And what's so great about Excel is that by setting up our worksheet in this way, I can go into that section and change any of those values, any of those assumptions. I can do it even more than one, right? To see the effect that a change in any of them or several of them at the same time would have on our outputs. Our Excel spreadsheet would automatically change, our calculators would automatically change, and so will the chart that we have on the other tab, right, on the other worksheet. So calculations and charts are automatically updated when we change one of our inputs. All right, so we're gonna make some changes here to see what happens to our output. We are especially concerned with our operating income, the total one, which is in cell H16, right? It's 3.3 million approximately, but let's change some of those inputs to see what happens to the total operating income. All right, so we wanna change the bonus from 5,000 to 7,500. We're also going to change the salary from 20% to 25%, and the miscellaneous category of expenses from 5 to 3.5%. And we're going to answer some what if questions. So what happens if we change those assumptions? What happens to our total operating income? All right, so scroll the worksheet so that row 4 is the first row visible. So I'm going to scroll down just a little bit. All right, there it is. Row 4 now is the first row that is visible, the revenues row. Click in cell A7 to select the row above, which to split the window, right? So we're gonna click on A7. That's where I wanna split the window. And we're gonna click on the split button. So that would be on the view tab. Click on split. All right. And as you can see here, we can use the scroll arrows up and down or left and right to look through the different areas of the worksheet, right? We want to scroll down so that row 9 is the first row visible on the bottom pane, right? And I'm gonna have to use that arrow to be really exact. All right, there we go. So we are just creating these panes just so that I can see the specific items that I am working with for this what if analysis, right? So I want my revenues, my costs, my gross margin, and then the expenses, starting with the bonus. All right, so now we're ready to start changing some of these assumptions. And the idea is that when we change them, we want to look at the spreadsheet and see what's happening to our calculations. So we're going to enter 7,500 in cell B20. We're going to replace that 5,000 bonus for 7,500. All right, so I'm going to press enter. Look what happens to the spreadsheet. Everything changes, right? And if you take a look at the graph changed as well. Did you see how those bottom, the little blue boxes went up a little bit because they went up from 5,000 to 7,500. Next, we're going to change 25% in cell B22. Our salary is going from 20% to 25%. When I press enter, everything changes. And then 3.5% in cell B25. So our miscellaneous category is currently set to 5%. I'm going to change it to 3.5%. All right, and I'm just typing 3.5. I don't need to put the percent sign because those cells are already formatted with the percent format. All right, so all of this changed. Look at what happened to our annual, or not annual, sorry, I should say 6-month operating income, right? Because we are adding it from January to June only, all right? So it's not the annual operating income, just our 6 months operating income. All right, so it changed from, we had approximately 3.3 million and now we have 3.04 million, right? So it was reduced. All right, so go ahead and save your work one more time to save these new numbers. And next, we're gonna learn how to use goal seek. And I already show you how to use this function in my live applications tutorial last week. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we can apply this really cool tool here in this example. So what is goal seek? Goal seek is really a problem solving method that allows you to set a goal for a specific variable. For example, here we're going to set our operating income to a certain level, and goal seek would allow you to find a certain input that will make that statement true, that will allow you to achieve that goal. So what we're going to do here is we're going to try to set our operating income to what we want is 3.5 million, right? And we're going to do that by changing one specific variable, cell B23, which is our site rental assumption. It's currently set to 10%, but we're gonna see to how much would we need to change that assumption so that we're able to reach 3.5 million in operating income. Of course, I could try with changes in any of the variables, in any of the what if assumptions, but it would be a trial and error process. I would have to keep typing in different values and see what happens to that 6-month operating income, right? So that's not an optimal situation. It's really good to be able to do it because we can see what is the relationship between each variable and our output. But if I want a specific output, then the goal seek option is a lot better. All right, so steps. Number 1, if necessary, use the scroll arrows in the lower pane to ensure that you can view all the what if assumptions. All right, I'm good. I can see them all. Select cell H16. So that's where we are, right? I'm on H16, the 6-month operating income. Display the data tab. So I'm going to go to data, also on that menu across the top, and we're going to click on what if analysis. It's in the forecast group. So click on that what if analysis, and here we have 3 options. We want to click on goal seek. All right, so then we get this dialog box. We have to enter some variables here. The first one says set cell. So what is the cell that we want to set? H16, where we have our 6-month operating income. To that, what value do we want to set it up to? We want that to be 3.5 million, so 3,500,000. By changing cell, which cell do we want to change? We want to change cell B23, our site rental assumption. So I'm just going to click on that cell, and as you can see, Excel fix that cell, put it as a fixed reference with a $sign in front of the column, letter, and the row number. All right, so I'm going to click OK, and I want you to look at what happens to our spreadsheet. All right, so did you see how the numbers were changing? So Excel was doing that trial and error process, experimenting with my spreadsheet, plugging in different values until finally found a value that makes our 6-month operating income 3.5 million. As you can see, that's the value that we have now on cell H16. And the result that we were looking for is the new site rental assumption, which, as you can see, is 4.14%. And that before was 10%. So we had to reduce that site rental percent to 4.14% to achieve a 6-month operating income of 3.5 million. If I click OK on this dialog box, my spreadsheet is going to keep these new values that Excel found with the goal seek function. But if I click on cancel, which is what the instructions are asking us to do, we're going to go back to normal, to the original numbers, right? So make sure that your sheet looks exactly like we want it to be. We have the original assumptions. We're going to click the split button again and the view tab so that we can remove those panes. All right, there we go. So now our sheet looks completely back to normal. And go ahead and press File Save one more time. All right. One more thing that I wanted to mention is how to use this Smart Lookup option. This option is really useful when there is a word or certain text in your worksheet and you don't know what that concept is, you don't know what that word means, so it's really helpful for those kind of situations. So we're going to select cell A6, gross margin. So maybe if you're not a business major, you may not know what that means, right? What is a gross margin? So in order to look at this Smart Lookup option, we're going to go to the Review tab in the menu across the top. There it is. We're on the Review tab, and then we're going to click on Smart Lookup, right? And here, this option is going to give me some suggested definitions. Excel is pretty smart and tries to give you the definitions that are related to the context in which this word is with respect to the rest of the worksheet, right? So gross margin is the difference, you can see, between revenue and cost of goods sold, which is exactly what we calculated in that worksheet, right? Our revenue minus the cost of goods sold. All right, so close that pane, that window, and we can go ahead and save it one more time. File, save, and you are ready to exit Excel now. So the instructions say you can go ahead and log out of your account. Here I have my account, Yvonne Liebenberg. I can click on it and then press sign out on the top right corner, right? All right, I will see you in the next video. We have completed our textbook project for Module 3. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.